Today we're going to create a website, a pretty simple one. It's going to use a few technologies, HTML, CSS, and also Bootstrap. This is our games website. We've got a logo and 6 thumbnails, and all it takes is about 27 lines of code that you need to enter. So during this video, pause it, rewind it. Feel free to fast forward things if things aren't going as fast as you'd like, but it's a pretty simple way to learn. First thing we need to go to is our Files section in Teams, and you'll see this starter template. Right click on that and go Download, and that's going to download into your Downloads folder. So you need to go into your File Explorer, go to Downloads, and then you should have this starter template. Double click on that, and then inside that you'll see a folder saying your website name. Right click on that and go Copy, and find your Digital Technologies folder. I'll just make one, and then paste it inside your Digital Technologies folder. You can see here it says your website name. By now you should all have a name for your website. Mine's just called A Plus Games. I can't use a plus sign as a folder name, so I'm going to just go A Games. And then inside that is our starter templates. So go to Start menu and type in brackets. And then just go to File and Open Folder. And then find that folder that we just created. So this is my A Games folder. I'm going to click on it and then go to Select Folder. And then on the left hand side we can see the files that are stored in there. I've got an index.html and an original.html. The reason I gave you 2 files, they're exactly the same. The reason I gave you 2 files is because if you've completely stuffed up the index.html, the main file you're working on, you can always go back to the original and copy everything out of the original and put it into the index if you need to. But otherwise, you pretty much don't need the original. It's only if you need to go back and reset absolutely everything. You'll also see this images folder. We see a logo, a thumbnail, and they go right down to thumbnail 6. This is the template. You don't need to understand most of this. It's just the default for Bootstrap, which is the framework that we're using to make things a little bit easier for us. You'll see a lot of similarities to stuff we've already learned, right? So we've got the HTML tag, the head tag, which closes here, the body tag, which closes here, and here's the end of our HTML. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can read it a bit easier. That might make life a little bit easier. So again, HTML, head, body, and body. The first tag that we'll start editing is our title. Remember that title tag is what appears up here in our browser. So I'm going to just write the name of mine, which is A Plus Games. You write the name of your game studio there. And when we hit the live preview button, it's going to open up a live preview for us. Alright, and you can see that nothing's actually loaded there. It's just a white screen. But what has changed is the name of our website. So it does say A Plus Games. So let's have a look at how we build out the actual structure of our website. Now, the first thing that we're going to put in there is a container. So we're going to write div class equals container. And what this does, when we have a look at a lot of websites, say the one that we're trying to create, we can see that there's this black space on the side, or this space on the side that has nothing in it. And that's because all our content is inside a container. So all our logo and all our thumbnails are centered on the page inside a container. So that's all that this line of code does. So if I just write anything on there and then go back into my live preview, you can see that we've got these blue areas here. And if I just refresh it, they'll disappear. And our text is in the middle of the page, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to get rid of this. And the first thing that we're going to do when we have a look at the website that we're trying to create is put our logo as the first thing that we have. And later on down the track, we're going to create a navigation bar where we can, have links for top-down shooters, or we can have links for platformers and that kind of thing. For now, we'll just keep it easy. So there's a new kind of tag that we're going to use, and that's a nav tag, nav, N-A-V. And that just stands for navigation. And we're going to give it a class, and that's navbar. So whenever you see these classes, they're built into Bootstrap. Not that you need to know everything about Bootstrap, but just remember that these classes are part of a framework that we're using. So we're going to use this special kind of div, which is the nav div, which all that means is it just denotes where the navigation area on your website is going to be. And inside here, we're going to insert our image, which is img src. src stands for source, and then we're just going to click through and find our logo. And that should give us our logo over here. As you can see, our logo is massive, so we need to resize that. So where it says img src and we've got our quotation marks, just outside that last quotation mark, we're going to give it a width of 200. And that should be pretty much the right size. Looks pretty good. And the only other thing that we want to do now is give our whole page a background color. Now we can do that by giving it some custom CSS. So we're going to find this body tag and we're going to write style and then open our quotation marks and we're going to write background color, and I'm just going to give it black. And now when we have a look at our live preview, it is black, which is perfect, exactly what we want. Alright, so at the moment we have a div, and you can see that this container div is closed here. We have a navigation, and that navigation is closed here. And then we have an image inside that navigation. The next thing that we want to try and develop out is our thumbnails. So we've got our navigation div, we've got our container div. Now we just need to make a row for these first thumbnails. So to do that, I'm just going to go underneath my navigation, but still inside my container div. And I'm going to create a new div, which is going to be row. And you can see it's automatically closed my row. So inside my row, I'm going to create a new div again, and this one's going to be col-4. So when we're creating, actually we'll just leave it as col, C-O-L. So in Bootstrap, col just is short for column, and it means that we're creating, where are we? A column down the page. So, or a column inside our row, I should say. So here's our row, and we've got 1 column, 2 column, 3 columns, and then another row. So I'm just created a column. Because I've only got 1 column in my code here, that column's going to be the whole width of my page. So let's go image source, and we're going to put in our first thumbnail, which will be thumbnail 1. And we can see here that our thumbnail is huge to begin with, and it spans across the whole page. We're going to leave it like that just for a second, and we're going to write the exact same thing again. Div class col with the right syntax, and we'll write image source images, and then click through to thumbnail 2. And when we have a look now, we've got 2 massive thumbnails. So we can fix that relatively easily. So where it says image source on your first one, go right to the end where these quotation marks are, and then we're going to go class equals an image fluid. And what that means is it's just going to be the width of our first column. And then if we go class equals image fluid on the second one as well, they'll both be the size of our columns, which is exactly what we want. At the moment, we've said inside our row, we've got 1 column, 2 columns. And you can see that here. 1 column and 2 columns. I think it looks better with 3 columns. So we're going to go back into brackets, and we're just going to give it 1 more column. So div class equals col. And then inside that div, we're going to go image source images thumbnails down to number 3, class equals image fluid. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now when we jump back into our website, you can see that we've got 1, 2, and 3 columns. If we were to put more columns in, what would happen is up to the number 12, each one of these images would just get a little bit smaller and would end up with up to 12 columns in our grid. But instead of that, I'm just going to now say, hey, I'm happy with 3 columns. I want to create a new row so I can add some more columns to that row. So to do that, we've got our div class row. What you can do if you're feeling particularly lazy, which I'm sure you all are, is go Control C or right click and copy. And just go to the next line and paste it in. So you can see we've got one row and then another row, and when we go to our live preview, we've got one row and another row, which is great. And then all we have to do is come in and go 0, 4, 0, 5, and 0, 6. And that's pretty good. Now there's one little hack that I can show you that'll make the styling of your website look a little bit better. So you can see here we've got a bit more black space, white space, whatever you want to call it, but a bit more spacing between each of our elements. And that is a Bootstrap class that we can use. So if you find where your second row is, so have a look through your document, you'll see div class row, and then the second time you've got that, we're going to use this special class, which is MT, which stands for putting margin at the top. We want a margin at the top of this row, and then we use a dash, and we'll go 5. And what that means is that it's going to add a margin at the top of this row, which we can see here, this little blue thing. If I click away from it, it'll disappear. This area here is a margin that's pushing this row down. The other thing you might want to do is add a bit of a margin at the bottom of your A+ games, and that's really easy. So just find where the navigation is, and then come across to class equals navbar in quotation marks and go space. Really important that you have the space between it. Go margin bottom this time and 5 again. And you can see we've added a margin at the bottom. And there's another thing that you can do as well, which is MT, which stands for margin top. And at the moment we've got a margin at the top, margin at the bottom, and when we have a look at our page, I'll just refresh it to get rid of those blue lines, you can see that we've got some pretty nice spacing going on between our rows, our columns, and also our logo. And that's as easy as it is. And then from here, you can just change out your logo with your logo, and your thumbnail with your thumbnails, and eventually we'll end up putting all our games in here. And that's the basics of a really simple website using Bootstrap. We'll just quickly have a look at some of the things that might go wrong. Actually, I might put that in a different video.